Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to our witnesses. I just want to begin by saying, and I see the chairman came back, what a extraordinary privilege it's been for me serving with him on this committee these last 4 years. I came to this committee for the subject matter. I stayed for the chairman. This is one committee where I would always try to come on time, not just to gavel in so that I could ask my questions, but because I always wanted to hear Pete DeFazio's opening statement, because I knew I would learn something from it. And Pete, I have to admit that if not for you, I would not know nearly as much as I do about budgetary treatment expansion and adjustment of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund under Section 9505 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. Did I get that right? Close enough. Yes. I came here with ambitious goals, of course, and I think we met a lot of those goals. The biggest investment in American infrastructure in our country's history, helping my state of New Jersey with the Gateway project, doing it at a time when most of my constituents thought Washington was broken and incapable of doing big things. We proved them wrong. Doing it in a way that enables our country, America, not China, to lead the world to clean energy. I can't understand why anyone would be against that. Now, we did spend a lot of money, I acknowledge that. I wish the infrastructure bill had been better paid for. The political reality is we would have done it in the House. There's no way to get a bill through the filibuster in the Senate that is fully paid for. That is the political reality. But I also think that we got to be a little bit honest when we're talking about the deficit. And I want to ask you, Mr. Ditch, you said at one point today, quite correctly, that when it comes to the deficit, the only question is how much money is going out, how much money is coming in. So I want to ask you whether you or the Heritage Foundation, for example, opposed the 2017 tax bill, which resulted, just yes or no, in about $2 trillion more going out than coming back in.
I was a congressional staffer at the time. Heritage was broadly supportive.
Thank you. Can you think of any bill that was enacted by the U.S. Congress during that 2-year period when the Republican Party had control of the House and Senate and the White House, enacted and signed by the President, that substantially reduced the deficit? Can you name one?
Nope.
Thank you. And you would acknowledge that the IRA, although your critique of it, I understand it, is that it doesn't get to the deficit reduction fast enough, fair enough, that it does reduce the deficit by around $300 billion over the next few years.
It remains to be seen whether that will actually be the case.
Okay. That is the estimate of the nonpartisan analysts that looked at it, and as you acknowledge, Republicans had 2 years to do something about the deficit, and you acknowledge they did nothing. We just cut it by $300 billion. As to the airline bailout, you actually believe that if we had done nothing at a time when not only the government was telling businesses to shut down, but people were not flying because they didn't want to die, you actually believe that if we had done nothing to help the airlines, that 2 years later they just would have picked up where they started, all those workers would have just magically come back to their airline jobs, all the planes would have been ready to go, the airports would have been fine, and the airline industry would have been in good shape this summer to fly all those people around?
I didn't say that. I don't believe it. There absolutely would have been layoffs, and there could very well still be jobs that would not exist.
Right.
The question to me is
probably massive disruptions, far greater than anything that consumers faced this summer. What would the unemployment rate in America be if not for the PPP program and the money that we spent, the deficit causing, acknowledge that, money that we spent during the pandemic? What would our unemployment rate be in America today?
There's really no way of knowing.
Would it be 3.5% or higher?
We very well could have higher unemployment today. The question is whether it was worth the incredible expense.
Okay. Well, I think most of the folks in my district who I represent who have jobs today and would not have, I think we kind of agree, some of them would not have jobs today, would probably argue that it was worth it, because I don't think there's anything more important, especially at a time where we all acknowledge inflation is a problem, that people actually have jobs and incomes to begin to afford the day-to-day expenses of life in this country. Thank you, and I yield back.